Part to it. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. We're gonna move on to the next item. Proposed ordinance for planning commission action requires allocation of funds. So last year at about this time, we had a joint meeting with the planning commission and the ZBA and the board. And if I remember correctly, the three big topics were the open space ordinance, which had been hanging around a couple of years at that point, moved that along. There was a need for solar. There was a desire for an administrative review. And then there was a desire for a lake district, were three of the takeaways that I remember from that from a year ago. And in a way, the open space has been there, kind of been waiting for that to move along before we put more things, I was thinking, in front of the planning commission. So the administrative review, and Mr. Thal, if you could maybe help with this real quick and explain this administrative review that you were telling us about would save the residents from having to come unnecessarily in front of the zoning board of appeals, pay $585. What types of administrative things could we review?
So, sometimes what it would be, it's more like things that have been approved, site plans that have been approved, and there's minor amendments to them. And the ordinance would define what, say, a minor amendment would be. And sometimes it's based upon, say, a percentage increase in the size of the building, or, a small percentage, or, there's different standards that would be contained within the ordinance as to when an administrative review would be appropriate and when it needs to be brought back before the full planning commission for a new site plan review or amended site plan review. So I think that's the general concept, is for things that have been approved to allow for some administrative deviation without having to come back before the planning commission for a full site plan amendment.
Got it. So those would be defined within the ordinance, or the language that we would potentially adopt when we choose to take this up. So that
Yeah, you would see what the proposal would be with regard to what standards and to what degree they could be altered. And, obviously you have to be comfortable with that as a township board. But it is to save some administrative costs, to applicants and time for minor changes that could be just processed administratively. And those things, obviously, that are of more substance certainly would not go through that process. But and as with any zoning amendments, they come to you, you can make revisions to them, you could throw the whole thing out, you can send it back.
Okay. So, so these are the topics, and I believe, the administrative review shouldn't be very time consuming. And I know the solar ordinance, that we need is, hopefully would not take a whole lot of time and effort. I think Mr. Thal has said has some that he has used in other communities, and we could take a look at.
Yeah, certainly solar ordinances are a very hot topic right now. Most communities are taking action one way or another regarding solar. A lot of it is driven by utility scale solar, looking for extremely large and putting together large parcels of property, thousands of acres for utility scale solar. The state has certain demands that on the utility companies that they produce a certain level of solar energy or alternative energy by X date. So the power companies and a lot of independent developers are out right now looking for places to put these utility scale solar. So that's kind of a main issue of how you deal with that. You won't be caught with an exclusionary zoning ordinance where a court could then say, fine, you're excluding it, there's a demonstrated need, and that location is just fine. You don't want the court to be determining that. You want to make those determinations. And then with regard to residential solar, a lot of ordinances, lack any standards as to, how you're going to treat them. Do you allow them in the front yard? Do they have to be on the building? Do they have to be side yard, rear yard? Those type of considerations you really need to think about. It's not to prohibit, obviously, residential solar. I've not seen any ordinances that do that. It's just to determine maybe where the proper location and to the proper extent that you would allow residential solar. And we do have a number of different ordinances that we can have the planning commission look at to work off of, that other communities have adopted or in the process of adopting.
Yes, thank you very much. So we have this in front of you, and so we were estimating, I was estimating, and Carol helped with this a lot, that it could possibly be about $5,000 for those 3 ordinances. And reached out to Rebecca Harvey, who assisted on the open space and has been a great consultant and resource for us, I think, to see if she would possibly be able to assist us on these. And she said she would be able to, and has done this in other communities, and felt like 5,000 would be a pretty appropriate ballpark for those 3 ordinances. So
That includes the Lake District. Is that part of that?
yes, so there would be the solar ordinance, the administrative review ordinance, and then the creation of a lake district, which is really I think the bigger one that would take more of those resources to create that lake district.
Because I'm confused about the Lake District ordinance, and I can't get it straight in my head what it is we're trying to fix. Is it the number of times that people have to go to the ZBA? Seems like it's 3 or 4 times a year. That doesn't seem a lot to me.
Well, I feel like we have more often than not have ZBA meetings. I would put it more like at 8 or 9 a year. Maybe Carol can, say yes or no to that, but I feel like we have a lot of ZBA
Well,
meetings.
so that's sort of my question.
So,
What
right.
is the problem that we're trying to solve?
Well, the ZBA last year when we had the joint meeting, and I think you were there, this was a big discussion. That part of it is, people on the lake, they're in this, low residential, they have non-conforming lots. Every time they need to do something, they have to come in front of the planning commission, or have to come to ZBA, to, get a variance from that. But if we had a lake district that was, took into consideration these non-conforming lots, these smaller lots than we have anywhere else in the township. Because you have the small lake lots have to deal with the same setbacks as if you had 1 acre. And some of these lake parcels are really tiny. I think one of them at the ZBA, they had a 30-foot on the lake. It was a 30-foot lot. So if you got 10 feet setback on each side, because that's what it says in the law, like, how are you going to build things? So people are constantly coming in to get variances. And if we had something that was really worked better for people in this lake district, it would alleviate the residents having to come in. When they come into planning commission, they have to pay $900. They have to put down a $2,500, or not planning commission, ZBA is $585.
But
which
it's not
is-
those people that we should be worried about. It's the neighbors that we should be concerned about.
Well, and they always get notified, right? When there's a zoning board of appeals, if you're gonna do a variance and I'm your neighbor, I get something in the mail that says, hey, your neighbor wants to do something, and here's this meeting, and you can come to it or not. And we've heard neighbors come to meetings, and some of them say, we don't mind, and some of them say, we don't like what our neighbors are doing. That's, yeah. For the zoning board of appeals. Yes, Carol.
I was gonna say, the other part to ZBA is, if the ZBA is granting all the variances that are coming through, then perhaps the ordinance needs to reflect that. So when the ZBA is granting all these variances, then that ordinance should address what they're granting.
Right. because we keep correcting it through the zoning board of
Right.
appeals, if we can just make the ordinance be what the ZBA keeps coming back and saying, then those people wouldn't need to come anymore. So,
Well, that could be that could be a different problem. ZBA shouldn't be granting all those variances. They should be
Oh.
following that's what I'm saying. It'd be nice to really get it. And I'm working on that, so I'll maybe do some kind of write-up so I can, the first thing you need to do is define the problem.
right, well,
And
that's.
so far, I
right.
haven't really heard a lot of,
Well, and yeah, maybe,
Good.
maybe Thal
Good
can
thing.
comment on that, but the problem is that we're really requiring people to come in, and when maybe it doesn't make sense if we just changed our ordinances, then people wouldn't have to keep coming in to get these variances.
let them come in. If somebody's
Right.
doing something next door to me, I want them to come. I don't want to do away with that.
Rob?
Yeah, a lot of times with like a lake residential, there might be, they put in sliding scale standards, for setbacks a lot of times so that, people can make reasonable use of their parcel based upon the fact that it is a smaller substandard parcel. And so sometimes what they do is the standards will allow for deviation from side yard setback, lakeside setback, based upon the size of the parcel. Different standards that allow for reasonable development on the lake that are different than just your low density residential standards. It doesn't necessarily, you can look at a lake residential district. You can also look at, and I don't know if you have, specific standards for, waterfront development and things of that sort that would directly address those issues other ways. But it's not uncommon that on these small substandard lots, they're dealt with not in the same district or with the same standards as, say, a low density residential, because obviously it's not low density residential, it's extremely high density residential. But it's how you deal with those standards. Whether you do that through a separate district for that or through other lakeside standards and provisions, can be kind of done either way. But normally the issue is that, yes, everybody comes in every time there is a development on the lake. They seem to come in for a ZBA appeal or variance. And maybe if you're getting many variances on certain properties, then probably you need to look and see how your ordinance is dealing with those properties.
I'll move to allocate funding in the amount of $5,000 for all three ordinances in 2022-2023 budget.
Second.
Thank you. So a motion by Rod, supported by Sandy. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. I would like to, would the board, I would like to make another motion. Thank you, Sean. That we, engage in the services of Rebecca Harvey. Oh, wait.
thanks.
All ready? Okay. I would like to make another motion that we, approve the engagement of services of Rebecca Harvey for the creation of the ordinances. I don't have a quote from her, but I would like to ask her, if she can give us a quote for these three, ordinances. Well, we got a new motion for that. Okay. Yep, okay. Right. Well, I'd like to make a motion to engage her, but we don't have any quote for services from her, so I feel like that's inappropriate.
Okay.
Although I feel like she would be a great person to do that. I don't think it's a good time. So. Also in here is this consideration on the limit of the residential solar panels. And, you know, we were just thinking about this, and especially if the solar ordinance, and we can maybe put that up top and fast track that it wouldn't be a long time. But I know Carol is getting a lot of questions every day for, arrays. And right now she's processing them as an accessory on your parcel. But there are other considerations and things that would be in our solar ordinance. And so we were wondering if maybe we should, and we can't do a moratorium according to our attorney, but maybe say that, that until the solar ordinance is adopted, that we would limit the residential panels allowed to 30. And I hear what Patrick is saying, and it's interesting that you said, and some other people commented too, on how many panels they have on their house, because I don't know exactly what it takes. I know there's 6 people in my home, 4 kids and 2 grown people, so we're gonna be using more than just a single person would. But this would, because right now, with just treating them as accessory units, it's a little problematic. You know, if someone moves out and they've got a huge array, or I know Carol has also dealt with in different, around the lake, if people are putting them on top of the house, do they stand up? Are they flat? You know, if they're standing up, are they impeding the view, of the lake? So there's just a lot of things to consider. I don't know, Carol, if you want to jump in, thank you. Just to kind of limit it right now. And I don't think, has anybody come forward with more than 30 for residential?
It's been 28 to my max.
28's been the most. So, I mean, that number is just, you know, we could push that up a little bit if we wanted.
Something to say.
Yes, yes.
So I found a couple of charts. I Googled it. I thought 30, what does that even mean? So I found one chart that said for because there has to be the owner has to be able to estimate how many panels and what size and all that kind of stuff. So that information is out there. So if you have a 2,000 square foot house in Michigan, to run a 4 kilowatt system would need 10 400-watt panels. However, a 2,500 square foot home, to power all of it by solar, would be 28 to 32 solar panels. That's for 100% power. And I thought, oh my gosh, there are some big houses around here. What if you had a barn? What if you had horses and you wanted to power all that by solar too? I don't think 30 is enough. I think we need to work off of a chart that says how many square feet you have in your home and use that as an estimate, because there's some really big houses here.
I think that could be addressed in the ordinance, so this is just a stopgap.
Right, I'm just saying the number of 30 is not flexible.
So you would like to go higher?
I would like to use, there's a chart
Right.
out there somewhere. And you come in and say you have a 3,000 square foot house, you want to power it 100% by solar.
Mhm.
I'm gonna look on a chart and say, okay, you can have 40 panels.
Mhm.
Because there are people who build giant houses.
Well,
Kind of hold them up
let me
because-
ask a question. So right now we're treating them as accessory structures. Is that correct, Carol?
Correct. Correct. We have nothing in our ordinance to address it, and I'm really being very liberal about doing it.
So as accessory structures though, wouldn't that control like the location? Like you can't put an accessory structure in the front yard of a residential property or,
It
do you have anything
Our ordinance does not,
that,
can't put anything in the front yard. It would be you'd still have to comply with all the setbacks, front, side,
right?
yard, but it doesn't.
Lot coverage, you'd still have to deal with lot coverage, right?
Pardon me?
You'd still have lot coverage standards for the accessory, treating it as an accessory, correct?
Yeah, well, that gets to be really tricky, because then you're using the surface as if you would a roof, you know, and treating that lot coverage based on that calculation. So yes, you're right. So far, I haven't had to go there and individually calculate every 4x8 panel, you know, and that lot coverage for how many acres. So we're getting there. You know, that's what I'm hoping is going to be addressing this with the solar ordinance.
Yeah, I suggest that you move as quickly as possible on the solar ordinance. As I've indicated, I think I talked to the supervisor about it in terms of moratoriums. To have a moratorium, you have to have a provision in your zoning ordinance that allows for moratoriums. And then the planning commission has to adopt a moratorium, and then the township board has to adopt a moratorium to have a proper moratorium in place. And, even if you create some artificial limitation, that's basically creating a moratorium of anything greater than that. So I'm kind of hesitant to have you move forward and say that, because I don't think that it would have legal standing as is, just the board saying you can only put 31 panels or 30 panels. I think if you're treating it, part of it is a zoning interpretation. So it is under the purview of the zoning administrator. If she says to treat it as a accessory structure, I don't think that's unreasonable to treat it as an accessory structure. And it's her call in that regard. Somebody, if they didn't like it, would have to appeal that decision to the zoning board of appeals. So I think right now you're treating it as an accessory structure. My suggestion is just to move as quickly as you can. I'm putting a solar ordinance into place and not try to make some artificial standards, by the board, that really, are subject to challenge. If a commercial solar company said they wanted to challenge that because somebody wants to put 32 panels on their property, we'd have a problem.
Okay, so the best course of action is just to fast track the solar. Fortunately, it's December. I mean, if it may play in our favor a little bit, that people will be maybe doing this in January, but
That's why everybody is pretty much fast tracking solar to get those standards in place. And, you can continue to treat it as an accessory building or accessory structure.
okay. All right, very good. Thank you very much for your input on that, Rod.
Mhm.
We'll just dismiss this agenda item and move on. All right, so next is another big one, the text ordinance, the open space preservation and development that has come to us from the planning commission. All right. So the planning commission held a public hearing on October 27th to consider the text amendment to section 3805 open space preservation development. After comments from the public and deliberation from the planning commission members, the planning commission unanimously approved recommending to the township board adopting the revised language to the OSPD ordinance. So sorry, Sandy, if I stole your, I read your thing there, but I knew you were bringing this forward, but I. So Sandy is bringing this forward as our liaison.
I'll make a motion to approve the text amendment to section 30-805 open space preservation development option for the Sylvan Township zoning ordinance.
And then supported by Sandy. Okay, discussion. Sure.
When I looked at this, I was amazed that it was 14 pages long. The one that we had from the planning commission the last time was 7 pages long, and this one's 14. So for the previous one, the only issue I really had was the density bonus. I was glad to see that was removed on on this one. Now, the new one here from the planning commission, it would have been really nice if it could have followed the format of the one we had back in 2020, because then you can see where the changes, sort of the red line, but it's a whole new format. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but the thing that really sticks out in my reading this is that this is putting a lot of work on the planning commission. This one had an ordinance that said, here are the rules. And if you wanted to do something different, you'd have to go to the ZBA, right, to get a variance from the ordinance. This one, it seems like it's putting all the work on the planning commission has to review these and make all these decisions as to side setbacks and, you know, is that really what we want the planning commission to do?
They're the ones that suggested approval.
You know, the planning commission does a lot of the heavy lifting. Whenever there's a development coming in, they're the ones who are doing, you know, the reviews, the things like this, the public hearings. So the planning commission's already making some substantial decisions. And we already have them just by virtue of what they do, really handling some pretty complex stuff.
So I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the neighboring properties around where something like this would go in. And right now, wherever this would go in, it would not look like the neighboring properties. And when I looked at, for instance, I've been to most of these meetings over the years. And so what I've seen in other ordinances, for instance, we were presented by Northfield ordinance, that might have been Patrick at one point, since we were presented that. What Northfield ordinance talks about is a greenbelt adjacent and parallel to a county certified primary and local road. That in addition to any required minimum setback specified in the subsection of this section, a greenbelt having a minimum width of 75 feet in AR and LR, 50 feet in SR1 and SR2. And the point of this is that we're screening a clustered development from the road. And I saw something similar to that in Grass Lake, so I've asked for different townships to send me their ordinances. I saw something similar to that in Grass Lake Charter Township, to their ordinance as well. But also what I'm seeing is in Northfield, it talks about a transition from adjacent parcel. Because once again, what we're looking at is we would put a clustered housing development in someone's backyard. And where this will go, it will not look like the surrounding area because we don't have this in anything except near the city of Chelsea. We have the higher density. So in Northfield's ordinance, they have a transition from adjacent parcels. A transition strip having a minimum width of 100 feet shall be required around the entire perimeter of all open space developments to be located in or adjacent to the AR districts and 50 feet for all open space developments located in or adjacent to LR, SR, and SR2. So we don't have any of that in this ordinance, and that is a concern of mine because we do not offer a transition strip for the surrounding neighbors. So if we had a traditional development before you know, next to you as a property owner, maybe you have a couple houses behind you. Well, now maybe you'll have 10. And that's a significant higher density along your property. And I think we have to really consider how this would impact the surrounding area. I also was looking at, let's see, and I'm working out, I'm sorry, the original draft, we were missing some pages, so I know it's on the draft that was presented to the planning commission. I'm sorry, this was the actual ordinance you have in hand. But under open space requirements. Open space requirements, which is D. And again, you have to look under this and tell me if that's what that says. D is in dog.
Open space requirements, yeah.
So number 10 is failure of the properties having an ownership interest in the designated open space to maintain that open space in accordance with the standards set forth in the terms of conveyance described in subsection 9 shall constitute a violation of this ordinance and subject to the violators all sections, including injunction relief provided for under this ordinance. So I went over this with Pat, my deputy, you know, was the chair for the planning commission, and Sharon, and she was, as the supervisor in Dexter, they, you know, created an ordinance, and then they found out where they had missed things. And so she was explaining to me that this, she said, this is not enough maintenance of the open space areas, and who pays for them should be in a master deed and bylaw at a minimum. And the way that she was talking about, you know, the way you pay for it is with a special assessment district, and she said that that's what they were looking at. And so, for instance, as well with a private road, when we're looking at how would a private road be maintained, that would also be in, the master deed and bylaws, and there would be a special assessment district. So under private roads shall be subjected to the following standards. Or it says the planning commission may also require that a special assessment district be established. She would recommend we write must.
Can you hear her wrap up?
Yeah, I hear, yeah.
Okay, perfect, good. And how do you feel about that? Is that something that you feel like we could put the must in there, and that would that be
Yeah, no, I mean, that's an appropriate comment and an appropriate revision, I think.
okay.
If that's what you want, but. And so that would be in every case, and I don't see a problem with that. I mean, we want to make sure that it is maintained.
And so you were saying,
So it's. Also under utilities, I'm sorry, under number 3, utilities, there's also a reference to under C. It's talking about appropriate provision for the ownership, operation, maintenance, and replacement of a community system. Shall be irrevocably committed and documented through agreements, contracts, covenants. Underneath that, it says the planning commission may also require that a special assessment district be established under Michigan Public Act 188. And she's recommending must. To maintain that community. So look under utilities, number 3. I'm hoping it's
under, okay, under design standards E. And there's 1 interior street system, 2 access, 3 says utilities. It's on page 7. C.
So again, just to reiterate, I think that I would like to see more language in this ordinance that protects the surrounding neighborhood. Recognizing that we will be introducing quite likely something that does not fit the surrounding land pattern. And that would, I would assume, be satisfied with setbacks. Setbacks from the road and setbacks from surrounding.
So was that something that the planning commission had considered, and because I feel like I remember setbacks, and we talked about setbacks, and then we finally decided that we weren't gonna have the setbacks.
In my draft that I did a couple years ago, that had kind of a setback off of all property lines. But I certainly understand what Amanda's saying in terms of, having a green belt along the road and setbacks from, a transition strip from adjacent parcels too. I mean, those are things that were discussed at various stages by the planning commission for sure in prior draft.
Mhm.
So I don't, obviously you have a motion and a second, and you're in discussion. You can move to, you could either amend your motion if you wanted to, you could vote on your motion. You could vote on your motion as is. You could amend your motions, you could send it back to the planning commission. You could, to the extent it's within what the planning commission had public hearings on, which I think all of this is within that discussion. You could ask the planner for language, to address that at the township board level.
I'm sorry, I missed that last part. You said that we could send it back to the planning.
You could send it back to the planning commission to look at those issues raised. Or you can take action at the township board level. If you get into too much drafting, I'd suggest that it go back to the planning commission with specific instruction. And typically you would instruct, a time frame within which you expect to receive it back.
But you feel like we could change those couple mays to a must.
That's not a problem. You can do that at the board level if you chose
Board
to.
level here. And so that would be those two areas regarding roads and regarding private well and septic, correct? That those would
Right.
have. Those two places, I felt like, private road,
Private roads, utility systems.
and utility systems,
And the
correct?
maintenance of open space.
And the maintenance of open space,
Which is.
Page 6.
is that page 610?
I believe so.
But that's gonna be different. That's not a mayor must situation. I was just trying to get the two main
Okay,
musts.
sorry.
So that we can do, that's fine. But I'm glad you're bringing it up because we want to make sure that we have all the things. And then, so those two things we could do. And then for 10, you're saying you would like to see.
The maintenance would be written in the master deed and bylaws.
That the maintenance would be written in the master deed and bylaws.
Yeah, it should be, but I don't, the language should be specific that is required because it should be required in any master deed or bylaws.
All right. So I am comfortable with those two things. I understand what Amanda's saying, and I understand, I understand this has been around and around for years now, and, personally, personally, I feel like we need to move on this. We have other things we need to do. We have talked about how this is something we have to have, by the state says we have to have it. And what we have right now is not legal, so we need to do something. And we have talked about in the past that we could pass something and continue to work on it, or continue to, have discussions on things. So personally, I think sending it back to planning commission at this point would be difficult, even with a time frame coming back to us, because they've been through these things, they've had the public hearings. I'm definitely on the maintenance and things like that. I'm not sure about at this point in time, coming back to the setback, because I feel like that's been resolved through planning commission.
If you show me where the second one is, I
The
got the first
second-
one, under C.
Okay, so the other one is on page 6, a private road maintaining. Yeah. Well, no, wait, hold on. The must is where it talks about, the special assessment district, and it must set up a. Isn't it?
So one other is new private road 4.
That's number 4. So where would that fall under?
Find it out.
Sorry,
You aren't able to locate it.
I've got the one under C, under number 3C. I've got that.
Okay.
And Kathy said it was under,
I thought it was
under,
It's under, so E design standards.
Yep.
Interior street systems, and then
Yep.
B private roads, then 4.
and that's, okay, and where's the one?
The planning commission may also
Oh, the very
require the
last
special
sentence.
assessment.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So that would be the other must.
So I can amend my motion. To move to approve the text amendment to section 30-805 open space preservation development option of the Sylvan Township zoning ordinance with the included changes to E, design standards, under B, private roads, section 4, the planning commission must also require that a special assessment district be established under Michigan Public Act 188 of 1954 to assure maintenance of the private road. And number 3, under C, to change, the planning commission must also require that a special assessment district be established under Michigan Public Act 188 of 1954 to assure operation, maintenance, and replacement of the community system.
In master deeds and bylaws, that the maintenance, wasn't that one of the other things that we said we could do administratively here was say that, and Rob said we could do that, that we would say the maintenance, would be in the master deeds and bylaws? Is that the maintenance, the owner, the
Maintenance of open space.
maintenance of open space?
Mhm.
Maintenance of open space would be written into the master deed and bylaws.
Okay. And that the maintenance of the
Open-
open space would be written into the master deed and bylaws.
Okay, so that is your amended
That is the
motion.
amendment.
You got that? And are you okay with the amended report on the amended motion? All right, any other discussion? Okay, then we have a motion from Rod, supported by Sandy. And since it's a ordinance, we'll do roll call vote. So, Sandy,
Yes.
Rod,
Yes.
Kathy, yes. Amanda,
No.
Kurt,
Yes. That was easy.
thank you, motion carries.
Blood, sweat and tears. in
I'm
there.
telling you, this has been a long time coming.
Okay. All right, so next, on our agenda, we have the consideration of a letter of support. So Chelsea is, oh. Oh, sorry, so the city of Chelsea is, seeking a grant from the Michigan DNR Spark program to, work on the bike trails, and one of those bike trails is the one that is going to be running sort of along Timbertown and up by Westchester, and helping to service that area. So Chelsea asked if we would send them a letter of support in their, grants. things. So I just put this together, I brought it to the board. I would make a motion to give the supervisor authorization to sign a letter of support for Chelsea's grant application for bike trails.
A second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. And I will also mention, and maybe we can talk about this later, sometimes we get requests for letters of support, but they're before the board meeting. And this happened, Amanda and I both got a letter from Chris Olson at the Watershed Council asking for a letter of support, which I wanted to give them, but we have traditionally brought these letters to the board just so that everyone, you know, so that the supervisor's not out there sending letters of support to everybody, and maybe it's not something the board would want. So if we feel like this is the proper way to do it, then we'll just keep doing it this way. Okay, I agree. All right. So we weren't able to do one for Ms. Olson because we didn't have a meeting, but I think that's the good way to do it. All right, additional office closure. This is submitted by Susan Gilby, who always submits this. She's requesting that we close the office for the 3 days that we would be open between Christmas and New Year's, which would be Tuesday, the 27th, Wednesday, the 28th, and Thursday, the 29th. Okay. All right, so that my motion, supported by Rod. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Yeah, we've been doing that for a while. And that's why, well, we'll get to the next one, yeah. Okay, Citizen of the Year for 2022, we're a little behind on this. Traditionally, we put this out in November, vote in December, and we award it in January, but we're a little behind the ball today. So we're putting it out there. We are starting now. You can submit a nomination form for someone in the community who's done wonderful things. Doesn't have to be for the township. It'd be nice kind of to branch out. So if you know anybody who in your area that's been doing really great stuff that's benefiting a bunch of people, let us know. So you can submit the nomination, and then in January we'll vote, and February we'll.
Can they complete this form online?
I think it is online. I don't know if it's fillable online. Like, I don't know if it's a Word document. Traditionally, we put PDFs just for the safety of it, but yes. So it's available online, or if you don't have it, you could certainly just send us the information and say, I support this person and these are the reasons why, and I can fill it out for you. Just present that to the board as your nomination, make it easier. So that's really all on that. It's just informational to let you know, board, if you have ideas of people, let us know. We'll revisit this then next month. All right, the approval of the 2023 meetings and holiday schedule. So Susan put together the board meeting, the ZBA, the planning commission meeting dates for us to approve. The board meeting, you'll notice we did move, she's got on here January 10th instead of the 3rd, because if now that we're going to close the office the last week of the month, very difficult to come back and have a meeting right away. So that's different. And so we have the board schedule, the observed holidays for next year, which we take from the federal calendar, a planning commission meeting list, and the ZBA meeting list, which have not been approved by those committees, those boards. So we can tentatively approve the planning commission tonight, and if planning commission or ZBA says, oh, we can't make this day, we'll have to adjust the schedule, but should we do approve these separately? Approve the board, approve the planning commission, or just one fell swoop? One fell swoop? Okay. All right, well, I will make a motion then that we approve the 2023 Board of Trustee meeting schedule, the 2023 holiday closure schedule, and tentatively approve the ZBA and Planning Commission schedules. Okay. A motion by Kathy, supported by Amanda. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. All right, thank you. Motion carries. The next one is the appointment to the Planning Commission. So, Mr. Seitz, announced his vacancy. He told me a little before November that he was going to be leaving. And during that time, I talked to Clifford Camp, and Mr. Camp has, for a while, had an application in. He didn't really have a spot that worked with his time. I think, and I'm bringing him forward as my recommended candidate for this. I think he's bringing a lot of experience that would be helpful at the Planning Commission level. He is representing an underrepresented area. Again, in our map for planning commission, the Planning Enabling Act, tells us that planning commission should be represented geographically, so people from all parts of the township. And so he represents that area as well that is underrepresented and has a lot of qualities that I think would be beneficial to the planning commission. I know also soon there are other vacancies that may come up. We have several people that are, their terms are up. So there will be an opportunity perhaps in the future to be appointing other people. So today, right now, the way that things fell and timing fell, I'm requesting approval of Clifford Camp to fill the vacant planning commission position, which expires December 2024. Right. So motion by Kathy, supported by Rod. Discussion.
Go first again?
Sure.
Okay, Don Capelas put together a nice letter and, I completely agree with her that, you know, Dan Russell has been asking to be on the planning commission for quite some time. He regularly attends township planning meetings. He participates in public comment.
So if I can right now,
Yeah,
I think
we'd
we're
like to address
here to discuss other applicants. I think my recommendation is for Clifford Camp, and I think, as supervisor, one of the supervisor's duties is to make recommendations to the planning commission. The board can say thumbs up or thumbs down, but it's not the same situation with ZBA members where we all bring people in and we discuss them. I'm not trying to be heavy-handed. This is the duty, the burden perhaps of the supervisor to bring people forward. So my motion is for Clifford. I think at this point, it's just an up or down of that candidate.
But you would not want us to qualify or vote.
You absolutely, you can qualify your vote, but I think, in terms of, we're talking about Mr. Camp, so if we have things that we want to say, regarding his abilities or his input, that's one thing, but it's not an either or right now. We're not saying, is this or this? It's this person. And so if you don't believe Clifford Camp to be the best person to be in that position, then I suppose you're going to vote that way. But I think right now, the way that the planning commission and the way the laws are set up, I didn't make this law, but this is the burden of the supervisor to make a recommendation and the board approves it or they don't.
When I read the Michigan Planning and Enabling Act, the part that talks about filling the planning commission vacancies, it says the membership of the planning commission shall be representative of important segments of the community, such as the economic, governmental, educational, and social development of the local unit of government, in accordance with the major interests as they exist in the local unit government, such as agricultural, natural resources, recreation, education, public health, government, transportation, industry, and commerce. The membership shall also be representative of the entire territory of the local unit of government to the extent practical. So when I look at this, and geography is one thing to consider, but there are more things to consider. And so if you're asking us not to talk about any particular candidate, I think there is another candidate that's been that has shown interest that owns a farm north of 94, which is near area of higher population density, owns a business in the township, has been to almost every planning commission meeting for the past 3 years, participates and gives valuable feedback to represent residents of the township, and has learned a lot about the master plan. So I feel that the other candidate that has shown interest at this time is the appropriate choice.
We'll just say we have probably 5 declarations of interest from other people other than Mr. Russell. So it's not as though he is the only other person out there. I have other people who have also expressed interest. And there's, so I just want to say that because it's starting to feel like what that's feeling like right now. And I have a lot of respect for Dan, and Dan came in and had a great conversation with me. This all happened after Mr. Sykes said this was happening, and I said, you know, hey, Mr. Camp, you've been lying to, you've got these great qualifications, so, you know, things don't happen in a vacuum, things happen in a sequence of events. And so right now, what I have said to an individual that is here is, hey, we had a vacancy in the planning commission. I know you were interested. We have had other applicants come forward since. Those are good people too. And a yes to one is not a, you know, you are not a no to another. This isn't a panel of people we're choosing right now. So I just want to say that, you know, there are people who want to serve on this commission, you know, it's important, I get it. And so hopefully, like I said, we have 3 or 4 people, I think 3, whose terms are coming up. And so maybe it's time to see if those people want to continue, or maybe, you know, shake things up a little bit so we can be more representative geographically, professionally across the board. You know, but geographic is one of those things. And so, you know, for me, I felt as though what Mr. Camp is bringing to the table is what we needed. And again, things happened after I talked about that for sure. And Mr. Russell and I came, you know, we talked and we had a great discussion. And I'm not saying I wouldn't recommend him later or something else, but right now, this is what the time sequence of events came forward. Dawn wrote a great email, sent it yesterday. Their board packet was made last week, so that's great, and it's great feedback. The item on the agenda tonight is Clifford Camp.
And his qualifications.
Correct, right.
So how many
Right.
planning commission meetings has he attended in the last 2 years?
You know, I don't know. I don't
Wouldn't
know.
that be part of the qualification? Somebody that actually goes and to the.
Yeah, I don't know.
meetings and
Would
is
it,
interested?
be? I mean,
For my vote,
I don't know. Okay, well, good. I mean, yeah, and these are, you know, that's good. Right,
So do we vote on this or do we
Yeah.
just? Okay.
yeah, it's, you know, so, right, so I made a motion and Rod supported it. This is our discussion period. Mr. Camp is doing it tonight if anybody had questions for him, but his application is here. So if there's no further discussion, we will just vote on this tonight. So I will start down here. Kurt,
no.
Amanda,
No.
Kathy, yes, Rod,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
thank you. All right, motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda is quotes for the carpet, which came out a bit in a funny way because Amanda, after the election, said, wow, you know, this carpet in here is really terrible. And I said, oh, you should talk to Susan, our receptionist. She's been talking about new carpet for a while. And then Susan took that as impetus to go forward and collect quotes. Which would be helpful because, you know, if we wanted to do this, it would certainly be something we would have to budget for, and especially when you see these numbers. That's really very expensive. So, you know, this is, we just wanted to put it out there. I don't know if the board, if we feel like this is a priority, and we can talk about this while we're budgeting too, really. Right, whether we want to do that. So we're putting this out there so you know that we went out and got these quotes, but they're very high. And so it's this and this, the quote was for this and for all the offices in the hallway and all of those. There's 2 offices that already have carpet tiles. I don't know how that came about, so I don't think we need to do those rooms, but it would be for this and the other rooms. And if you want to, you know, these will likely be stale by the time we come around in budget. But it was interesting to me that one of the vendors moves the furniture for us, and the other one said, you have to move the furniture and you have to get a dumpster for this, so. So you can look at those, but if anybody, unless anybody has any objections, I say we just table this item until budget. You know, it will be months from now.
I think that's,
So, okay, I'll make a motion to table till budget time.
I'll second.
We'll do a quick roll, vote, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Just one, before I vote the discussion, I don't think carpet's the way to go in here.
Okay, What do you think?
Well, there are other options that you can do flooring that's easier to clean. This, if somebody spills coffee.
That was why the tiles. That way, if that something does happen, you can replace a tile or 2 tiles.
Oh, I see, some kind of hard surface, that probably is a better idea.
It's a little slippery. That's the only thing I worry about with tile.
That's why,
Um,
I'm sorry, what?
It's slippery.
Slippery.
I'm
Well-
always worried people are gonna,
I've seen
Yeah.
people out in that lobby slip. I've seen.
yeah,
I'm not saying hard tile, there's laminate flooring.
Right.
Put down,
Okay.
it's not slippery.
Okay.
One question is, how would changing the flooring affect the AV that we're gonna get? in
right,
here?
right. We were wondering that too. Oh, that's a good question. See,
So-
lots of questions.
So yes, I will to table.
Table. Okay. All
That
right.
was a second from you, Sandy?
Yeah,
All right. So all in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
This is aye. Okay, opposed, say nay. All right, thank you. So we will table that. Consideration of boards, oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's-
that
I
was,
just
that was,
scrolled
okay.
out. Yeah,
Okay, so the next agenda item is, we've had some staffing changes here, so, the previous deputy treasurer, is going to be leaving and there's a new deputy treasurer, Trenda Eversole, who is here tonight, so thank you, Trenda, for stepping in that way, and you will see here at the office, she's gonna be working in, Rod's office, but as such, it's important that we memorialize in the minutes, removing Melody as deputy treasurer from the Chelsea State Bank accounts and adding Trenda. So I will make a motion that we remove Melody Sandell from Chelsea State Bank, Sylvan Township, Chelsea State Bank accounts and replace her with Trenda Eversole. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, and then we should do the same thing for the deputy clerk. So we will remove Kate Zarenko as deputy clerk on Chelsea State Bank accounts and replace her with Pat Kelly. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you, motion carries. And then the final thing that I added, is really kind of a formality, but, our assessor found this information on Board of Review appointments. And it says that, Board of Review members must be appointed and take the oath of office within 10 days of appointment. And we reappointed everyone, I think in September or August, and they were not sworn in. So, next week is a board of review meeting, so they will be, all of them will be here, all 3 regulars and 1 alternate. So if we can, just as a formality, reappoint them again tonight, we will get them, I will swear them in next week, and then we'll be in compliance with them. So I will make a motion to reappoint Lee Aaron and Ruben Lesser to terms from January 1, 2023 through August 1, 2024. David Jorgensen from a term January 21, 2023 through August 1, 2023. And Dave Reinhardt as an alternate term January 1, 2023 through August 1, 2023.
this one question, how come the other 2 aren't 2024?
Well, probably because we stagger and we,
Gotcha.
on the different, stagger people, so not everybody's up at one time. Yeah, yeah. Like that. Thank you. All right, so motion by me, supported by Amanda. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, say nay. Thank you. All right, that concludes the business of our meeting, and now we have our second public comment portion, followed by the Board of Trustee member comments left on the agenda tonight. So is there a second public comment? Yes.
Lois Whiteman. This is not pertaining to anything, but it's something I need help with. I signed up on the Sylvan Township website for documents on the end, notifications. And there's a box where you check, where you put your email in, and then you wait for a complaint, and then. So I don't know what to do. I think I did it. So I need some help with that. And secondly, I was looking at Washington.org, that, property and parcel hookup. And I could not find any of the properties in Sylvan Springs, like, active funds and those properties. Yes.
I was saying,
I don't think they're in Washington.org or something like.
so you're looking them up, what do you mean, in like, on the,
And the services on the property parcel hookup. Those addresses and everything.
I just wonder if that's because that's right.
But
it's under GIS, do you look under GIS? You look under GIS.
We never even inside.
But they're not, like, they're right, it's not. If you come in, I'll show you. Well, yeah, you guys will be instructed about that, because it works for everything else, but it's not working for that. It should. I know it should, but it's not. Yeah.
Great, I'm glad you guys connected, because Carol's the one who uses that GIS and all of that stuff a lot on there, so she's probably the best person to help you, so yeah, absolutely.
And Carol, question, because it's a mobile home park, mobile home park has its own address. Everything inside of it is private.
Yes, but when you click on the parcel, it all pops up and populates, you know, for what it is.
Okay.
So it's in each phase.
It doesn't give a person's name at all, it gives like the development. name.
Right,
Because that's Moser.
Because they rent,
All
the
right,
people that live in there rent
So-
the parcel.
so I have a question, is a person that rents in the township, somebody that we should have representing us on commission?
You don't have to own. You don't have to own property in the township.
I went to a Zoom session earlier in the summer. It's about planning. And everything that Amanda read was. They want people who have represent all kinds of backgrounds. But if you were a renter, you can be eligible to be on the planning commission. If you own property in Sylvan Township, but live somewhere else, let's say in Ann Arbor, you can also become appointed to the planning commission. So it's not just people who own property.
You have to be a qualified elector.
No,
No,
I don't think so. All you have to
Members
do
of the
is
planning
decide.
commission shall be qualified electors of the local unit of government.
Is that say under the planning commission, then is that under the,
Yep.
What's the zoning enablement?
that's under the zoning enablement
Page 4, section 4.
to be an eligible member?
because in Ypsilanti, the person who was the chair of the Economic Development Corporation lived in Ypsilanti. Then he bought a house on Pleasant Lake, but he owned a business in Ypsilanti, so he was still, of course, that's the Economic Development Corporation, so never mind.
yeah,
But, right.
right,
The
thank you,
field
Lois.
of candidates is way broader than you might expect.
It kind of smells, goes back like a full back, so people who probably can't. Oh, right, I mean, that goes way back,
Right.
doesn't matter. Business.
Was it, Mr. Townsend, did you have your hand up? Or
Yeah.
I thought- Yeah, okay,
Yeah, so.
are we good? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Disappointed in the board's decision about the appointing the planning commission member. There were many good reasons given the support of Dan Russell, and he had one reason, that the person lived somewhere. So I would hope that future positions that come open, that his interest and his dedication as evidenced by the last several months when I've been more involved. I would hope we have consideration for that. And the vote was obviously preordained, I mean, so that just did not have really good outputs. And then I would go back to the other, we had asked for the person who made the NIMBY comment, and it's solicited, was gonna go to make sure that the real estate agent wasn't, you weren't gonna lose that development. It sounds like solicitation to me. That wasn't put on the new business, so that could have been something you added tonight. So I'm gonna ask a question, that can be addressed. at some
Well,
point.
and I said I would address it at the board member trustee comment, and unfortunately, this is like, it's the last thing on the agenda.
Okay.
Maybe we should flip flop these and have board of trustee comments and then public comment afterwards, because it kind of feels like I'm hearing the same thing and I haven't had an opportunity, so,
Okay.
but yeah,
That
right.
was my, you know that before the master planning process gets
I
underway.
will say what I can say about it tonight.
You know who the person
Right.
is.
Well,
So
I
that's
did,
that.
I
We deserve to know.
understand, yeah, okay, perfect, very good. Any other public comments? Patrick?
Okay, two things. First of all, I want to express my appreciation, in particular to Kurt, the way that he handled the issue with Westchester Farms. Kept on the issue. And read all the documents, all the pertinent documents ahead of time. As many as he had. and requested the rest of it. That just seemed like such a display of diligence. I don't know, Kurt, whether you're right, but I know you're following the right process. So, I wouldn't say it. I've been struggling to say something about the appointment of the planning commission too. I'm gonna say something that I think everybody knows, but nobody said yet. Despite all this other talk about geographic diversity, experience, involved in township affairs, and everything else that we talked about, and education and everything, where different people excel in. For somebody who's known in the township, and you know who the person that you're considering is, it's a political issue. And I think everybody knows that. It's a political issue. And you try not to make it a political issue because it's not really supposed to be, but you can't avoid it because you know who the person is and you know their agenda or their mission or whatever, or you think you do anyway. You might be wrong too. But if it was me up there making the appointments, I would look first and foremost for somebody who's confident and for somebody who, above all, wants to serve in the spirit of service. And it's hard to judge, but I know you're all trying to judge that. I don't know what to do next time, but I agree very much that when somebody's term expires, you shouldn't automatically roll them over into a new term. You might want to consider somebody who next time who has a declaration of interest, not just roll forward. And I said that before. So for some of these people, if there are 4 or 5 people who want to get on there, maybe you have to ask whether that person's better than a sitting member too. And that would be perfectly legitimate. And I guess that's all I want to say. It's a hard decision. And as I wrote on Free Sylvan Day, I've even considered putting in a declaration of interest myself, and I haven't done so. And I don't think I will. But I actually don't think I'm the best person to serve either. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Other public comments? Okay, now we get to move to the board member comment. Perfect, go ahead, Sandy.
So, recently we had Barry Lonick come and present to everybody about land preservation. And I realized today that, I think that we need to form a committee or a study group or whatever we're going to call it, and follow in the steps of Dexter, because they took more than a year to find out the ins and outs and everything of this. And So I'm not sure what, I didn't do it today, I didn't do it for this meeting, but what is the process that I need to do to ask the board to form a board-approved committee? It's kind of like what you did with the broadband, where you made it an official group.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, I think we could put it on the agenda and we'll just create a committee and, a scope or, tasks that we want them to do.
Now, the way that we did that with broadband, we already had met before that, and we knew who we would, we would propose, which was very helpful.
Yeah. So,
Right.
I mean, because we want to have something on the website to invite, people who have expertise and whatever that is, and, determine, I don't think there needs to be a number on membership, that's what you think?
I mean, 3 to 5 at least, I would think.
I'm not sure.
I
Yeah,
know
right.
2 people.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be more toward-
That would be-
Yeah.
What did you say?
I would be more toward 5.
Oh, gosh, yeah, I was thinking, actually more than that. How many were on the, broadband, in the broadband group?
Remember, Pat?
10 of us?
There might have
Um,
been 10, so
It grew, I think maybe it was 7.
7?
It
Seven?
kind of,
Mhm.
it kind of did that for a little bit.
Okay. 7 to 10, maybe?
Sure, that sounds good to me.
Okay, so then I'll just make that an agenda item.
Okay,
For next
yep.
time, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll think about what, any other things we've done when there's been committees put together in the past.
Do you need like to have a group? Like we did before we do that? I mean, I
I
think,
don't know, because remember when McKernan, when Tom McKernan was supervisor and he had the water,
Oh, yes, I was on it.
yeah, but you were never, you
Since
won't,
Kurt.
yeah. But I think in setting that up, didn't we have like, there was like a vision or an ask or something that we were like, go forward and do this? I don't know. And I'm just thinking there might have been, and I'll look into that, but I think this is a good hand going forward. And January 10th is the next, so we'll
Sure.
have time to look around.
You can also ask the others,
That's right. Ask them.
since they're our neighbors.
Very helpful. All right, so I would, so Ms. Townsend had reached out, I believe originally to Amanda, and then hadn't heard back, and so she contacted me and I responded. And it's been on my mind, Renee, I want to tell you that you're, and I had said, I'll get back to you. The attorney isn't on the call anymore. I'm limited in what I can say. The attorney has told me that I should say that this is a personnel matter at this point. And so I can't discuss it outside of those personnel people that are involved. It's not something that's at a board, at this point, it's a personnel matter. So if I wanted to say things, I can't. I'm limited. All I can say is that this is a personnel matter that is being handled at the township right now with our attorney. And I think that's really all I can say at this point, especially without his guidance here, because I don't want to run afoul of saying something I shouldn't in a legal matter. That's not good. So I'm gonna limit myself. I can ask him tomorrow. I can send him an email and say, what else can I say? But right now, he has instructed me to say that it's a personnel matter and is being handled at the township. And I know that's not what people want to hear, but that's what's going forward. Well, and I would want to just double check with him to make sure. I mean, I know there's discussions. How much can I say? I don't know. Let me check with him tomorrow and see like if there's certain details that I can put out there, but right now, without him here, that's what he's told me to say about this, is it's a personnel matter and it's being handled. So Renee, I will write to him and I can, CC you, or I can write to him and see, and then share with what I can share with you. But at this point in time, it's a personnel matter. And we have found out that the supervisor is the personnel director here. So that's, yeah, surprise. So that's what I can say. Yes. Kevin.
As the personnel director, does that personnel matter lead to disciplinary action? Does it lead to exclusion from key activities such as master plan review?
Well,
Because that obviously the statement that was made precludes them from having a professional, unbiased approach to the review process. So I'm just asking, how is the master plan review process going to move forward in a professional way if somebody involved in it thinks of residences as NIMBY?
Right, I hear your question, and I don't know, because I didn't really realize, I didn't know that, I'm gonna be frank, I didn't know I was personnel director until all of this came up, because really when, so, I don't know, this is all, it's a whole new corner of the supervisor's office that I'm trying to get around, and I know you guys all understand, I don't wanna run afoul on the legal stuff, I don't wanna run afoul of any sort of human resources things that I shouldn't say, and that's a lot of thin ice around there in both of those things. So I want to share things. Again, what I can say right now is it's a personal matter. We're handling it at the township. I'll confirm with Mr. Thal if there's anything else I can send. There's a resolution being worked towards, what I feel like I can say. But I'm hamstrung. I'm limited in what I can say to you. And I do want to share with you that it pains me. It's not, I don't want to sit up here and keep information from people. But I also have to listen to the attorney and that's what I feel comfortable with what he has authorized me to say tonight. So I'll double check and look into it more. But that's the situation.
Unfortunately, it seems like every time I stand up, I say negative things. I appreciate all the work that goes into running this township. I appreciate the people on the board that do the work, the people on the planning commission that do the work. I've done a lot of volunteering and it's a thankless job. 100%, not that you guys are not all volunteers, but it's a thankless job. I would rather have everybody that works in this building, somebody that I can give them trust and just turn over all of the township management issues to, and I don't have to worry about it. But I don't see that. There's so many things that have happened in the last 2 years that indicate otherwise. So unfortunately, that's the reality of my perception of what's going on. So you ran on transparency and service to residents.
Right.
I'm gonna rely on that, Kathy,
Okay.
and,
Yeah.
Trust but verify. So I'll be back.
I understand, and I appreciate that. And again, transparency as much as I can give, I can't, it's not my world. It's a world where there's all these other things going on. So if it was up to me, I would be laying it all out there. But again, I have to work within that. So I appreciate that. That's my goal, is to have transparency, and I've served for 8 years and I feel like, done a good job. So I'm not here trying to keep things in the dark or anything like that. So I appreciate your comments, and I think all the board appreciates your comments. So that way.
And if I may,
Yeah.
There were three questions asked
Yes.
at the beginning of this meeting, two by me from my town, and one of them was addressed, two of them were not. I've sat here for 3 hours, I asked a couple simple questions. I was expecting a little conversation, someone to address that, and you promised up front, I'll address that stuff in those moments.
Right.
Silence.
Yeah.
So for the record, questions were asked, not answered.
Well, not yet, because the appropriate time is not to do it at public comment, and also the appropriate time is not really to do this on the agenda item when this is the person that we're, when would be the appropriate- well, now, and I felt like I had said earlier, during Board of Trustee comment, unfortunately, I feel like it's really the only time that I can have these things. And I did jot down your questions, and unfortunately, this board pack is so huge. It's like, it's falling apart here. But I do, we did sit down and talk about that. And you were concerned about the open space, and you were saying that I said the master plan would protect us from that. I don't recall saying exactly that, but I think, because I think, and you had said too, like this could be anywhere. It's not as though it's only in a certain district, with like one certain district or something like that. So if that was what, a takeaway from you, then maybe I misspoke or something, because I don't know that the master plan is gonna protect us from this, but this ordinance is, it's a tool that we can offer developers. If the developers come, we'll say, here's something you can do, or they can go through this traditional method of platting or doing, whatever, and making these places like we have now with the consent judgments, with the Westchesters and all of those things. We don't have a lot of control over. Somebody wants to sell their property to a developer. The only way we can control that is through zoning, through things like, what's allowable. So I think that, that is the way that we're gonna protect the township. We can't stop whoever owns the parcel over on Pierce Lake. We can't tell them, you can't sell your parcel to a developer. He's gonna sell it, but what we can do is protect it, as we did, and they came forward and there were things and we denied. And we may get sued again. And this is how we incur lawsuits, but we're standing up and we're doing what the neighbors wanted us to do. We got up and we said, you know what? No, we don't want this development here. We don't want that development here. So when we say no, but maybe it's according to some attorneys, it was allowed, they're gonna take us to court over that. And this is where we have consent judgments. 7 or 8 of them over the years. So we're trying to do the right thing and we're trying to support you guys and say no. Sometimes we get sued. And so we can't control what people do. We can control by putting parameters. So if you're gonna sell your land to a developer, you can either come in and put these cookie cutters, or you can take a look at this, which preserves some open space. And you don't get any extra lots. You're not getting any more than you would have gotten had you done 2-acre parcels, but you can configure them closer and you can preserve that area around. And to me, that's, if we have to have development, that's the better way to have development. And then we only allow development in places where we've agreed along the urban, corridor or something like that, where, we're, encouraging, where development would be.
Well, and I think that's my question was when this was open for discussion amongst you all, so like, talk about that. Not now, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
The gates open, horses are gone, right? So what my request was let's just talk about that before we approve this. Should there be something in that ordinance that says, hey, here's where, master plan says it, but something in the ordinance to make it a little more ironclad. It's pretty vague. It doubled in size. So now the lawyer's got 14 pages to interpret rather than 7.
Mm-hmm.
So it went south, right? We talked about setbacks. They're not on there. I don't know why. Don't know what happened, but everyone's probably so sick and tired of it. I get it. I totally get it. It's like,
No,
oh my
but I
God,
think
it's Groundhog's Day again.
Didn't they at one of the planning commission meetings, they agreed that they weren't going to do so, that was a trade-off, like there was a lot of like, we're gonna do bonus, we're not gonna do bonus,
What
then
was
we'll
the
do
trade-off?
setbacks. Harvey's recommendation.
What I recall was that we would allow this on any size parcel, and that there wasn't going to be minimum lot dimensions. Those were the trade-offs. There was no.
Well, the bonus thing was in there too.
That was it.
That was one of the things that we said, okay, we're not gonna allow any bonus homes, if you have a 10-acre parcel and you could put 5 2-acre homes, then you get 5 homes on that 10 acres. So, you can either.
But anywhere we leave ambiguity where we want to
Mhm.
do. And the fact that we passed this without a transition strip between the surrounding neighbors. It leaves the neighbors open to be pretty upset when what's being put next to them doesn't look like the surrounding neighbors. That's a big concern.
Yeah, it does say all other zoning ordinance dimensional requirements for the underlying zoning district shall apply. Unless modified by the planning commission.
That's where the planning commission has latitude.
But the underlying zoning is also, for instance, in an ag zone, it's 30, I thought, I printed it
What's
off.
the setback? in
35
ag zone?
feet, I think, or maybe it
Ag,
depends on the size of that.
Ag is 30 side, 50
So,
million
and you can see in
they
the,
are making, they'll make their allowances, so you want a quarter acre house size on those, that acreage, you can cluster your homes on quarter acre.
but normally in an ordinance, you would want that as explicit as you can make it. If the planning commission does want a waiver from that, that's the way to go. It's not that, oh, we're gonna actually try to make a bigger space. Because the ordinance allows, if I'm a developer, I'm gonna go by what the ordinance says. If the minimum says I have to comply with this, I'm gonna be pretty upset when the planning commission comes back and says, well, in your case, we're gonna make you have a bigger setback. That's not, that won't fly. So the way you set it up is that you have the most, and then you look at the situation and you allow that.
Yeah, I made that point. I made it from the other end, making the point that a 50-foot front yard would create, and a 66-foot wide right of way would combine to make houses 166 feet apart across both sides of the road. And I hear Dan's concern that maybe his recommendations were not adequately discussed. But my recommendations that I wrote up in the planning commission were not discussed at all in the report. I didn't complain about it, but I feel bad because I think my recommendations were also very long. Especially that 166-foot line gulf between homes. I actually don't think that Rebecca Harvey knew what the front yard setbacks were when she went to the other.
Yeah, she did, I gave her everything.
But her example, her illustration of good design shows something that is much less than 166 feet apart.
But that's the latitude planning commission has.
So you don't say what you need. I'm gonna stop because I had an argument already, but. I think nobody, including myself, is ever gonna be happy with that. Because. Sorry. Anyway, I wanna thank everybody. Hang on to it. Hold on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a very long agenda. It's a marathon. Okay, so I will say that, and I hear everyone again on Mr. Russell. And there will be opportunities in the future, but also, I had conversations when I knew Mr. Sykes was gonna be leaving, so then is it right for me to say to someone, hey, there's this opportunity, and then say, oh, you know what? That's not, you're not the one right now. I mean, I just, it felt like it's, and the timing is such, like I had conversations and I met with Dan. I understand Dan's a wonderful person. He's been to a lot of planning commission meetings. I see a lot of people here who have been to a lot of planning commission meetings. And he would be a fine candidate, and in the future, I will totally entertain that. The situation that we had right now, the way things fell and the way that, the timing was, it was what it was. I had a great conversation, with Dan. And again, I don't want anybody to have hard feelings. I don't want people to think that I'm saying no. It's not like that. I don't feel like it's like that. And so, we will have opportunities in the future. I'll just talk too long about all of it. It's been a very long meeting already. You've all been here and been so wonderful to stay. Does any other board member have comments, or is there anything that I need to? Okay. Motion to adjourn at 10:20. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Yeah. I'll send this to you. required. This is your chief, and look all over.